These lines I write, I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in. Full time to the 10. I'm on my clock, like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on ucy.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. Really happy to be back. So many interesting things going on, and God, what a shit show of a news day today, right? I mean, it was just, it was all over the place. First, it was, Donald Trump was paying hookers to pee on each other. And then it was 4chan saying that they were going to, that they were the one that set everybody up. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy day with news. All these cabinet confirmations are going through, and the anti-Russian propaganda is just at an all-time high. And it's just up to us to try to cut through all this bullshit, because let's face it, there's a lot of bullshit going on right now, a lot of it. That being said, thank you all for tuning in, and you can catch our show 5 days a week, the Anti-Media Radio, Monday through Friday, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of different perspectives. We got a bunch of really cool changes happening to the website, and I think you guys are going to really like what we have in store. And we haven't been just sitting on our hands for all this time watching this crazy propaganda war play out without having a plan to come back and make a counter-strike and all that kind of stuff. That's what we're working on. The new website is going to be something different than anybody has ever really experienced before, especially in the news business. And that's something that we're going to be talking about. We have I'm sure a lot of people listening are familiar with SM Gibson, who hosts our radio show on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He's going to be coming out at the end of the month. And so we're going to be co-hosting some shows together. And he's going to be here at our home base in Chula Vista, California. So it's going to be interesting to see this new site, and I'm just super optimistic about the direction, and just with this crazy shit going on. I mean, DB, what do you make of this media war that's happening? I mean, today and last night, BuzzFeed has put out this report which is openly unsubstantiated, right? So they're basically putting out a report with the caveat of saying this is probably, who knows if it's real or not, but we're putting it out there. And then, of course, there was some alternative, or not alternative, but some separate reporting on the same report, I guess, by CNN. And that was the source of a huge contention today with Donald Trump. And he called CNN fake news. And there was just this confirmation at Donald Trump's press conference today between CNN and himself. DB, what do you make of all this? It's just so crazy, dude.
We were talking about it last night on the after show, and I mean, it really is. It's like an unprecedented masterstroke by the public. And then earlier today, Claire said, for once, for one day, we had a definitive win. And when she said we, she meant the alternative media. It's a sea change, man. I mean, it honestly is. You can now go out and punk all of your liberal friends and call them libtarded because they are. Because I guarantee you, they're still pushing it. They're still pushing it. So you can just keep pushing all the articles back in their face and go, you know what? I understand. I get why you're so angry. I understand the whole WikiLeaks thing derailed your your matronly messiah, who is actually, thank God, not in office, because we'd be in a World War III scenario pretty soon. But that's another point, man. The point is this: it destroyed the old grade lady. It destroyed WAPO. It sank BuzzFeed. And any organization that gave credence to it and didn't actually go through it and read it, they're idiots.
So do you think there's any truth to this BuzzFeed released I guess they're calling it a dossier, I guess is the proper way of saying it, on Donald Trump, which is basically saying that he's been being, the Russians have enough info on him to blackmail him and make him into their puppet, and that he was literally paying hookers to pee on each other on a bed that Obama previously slept in Russia. I mean, it sounds so funny. Like it just sounds so fictional that it's kind of funny, but
yeah, no marketing.
Because it is.
It is, right? Also joining us tonight is Claire Bernish. What's up, Claire?
Not much. I'm sorry. I can't hold back because this is so absurd. It is unbelievable. I mean, you take this report. I mean, it's called a report, but really what it is a 35-page book report from an unknown person that is typed in basically Word format. There are no sources. There is nothing to back it up, and BuzzFeed runs with it. And even worse, supposedly this report has been in the hands of the media and the intelligence community for months, like since the summer. If that's actually true, then they had all of these months to vet this report, and they had all of these months to investigate the sources and the claims therein, and none of them did it. And it took until now, 10 days, well, when it was published, 10 days before Trump's inauguration, for them to actually publish it. And CNN was basically saying, well, here's what's in this really good report that we have on this intelligence issue about Russian involvement or whatever. And they won't even link the report. BuzzFeed says, to hell with this, we're going to put this report out. And they publish their own thing saying, this is really flimsy and there's nothing to it, but here it is anyway, because Trump is about to be president and we don't like that. And all of mainstream runs with it. And so when all of mainstream runs with it and it becomes this viral article, it's this ridiculous scenario where you have basically propaganda with nothing to back it up running the show. And this is so typical nowadays. And it's insane. And yet everybody ran with it. And then when BuzzFeed got called out for being like ridiculous and absurd and baseless, then these other outlets, like the New York Times, said, hey, that's bullshit. There's nothing to that report. And yet the New York Times had parroted the same claims, and their only defense was that they did not publish the actual documents.
The richest part about it was the CIA briefed Obama and Trump on it.
Yeah, that story is now being retracted as well. I mean, or at least walked back. So they're saying, well, we don't know if Trump actually saw the report on this or not. But what to me is hilarious is, like you said, I mean, New York Times has come out and they said, well, CNN and BuzzFeed messed up big time on this, and this is fake news and blah, 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 blah. And everybody is throwing around the fake news thing. And that's maybe the most hilarious thing for us personally as the anti-media is after being labeled fake Russian propaganda, fake news, and all this other crap. I mean, the fake news label has backfired. Where now Trump himself is calling CNN fake news. New York Times is accusing BuzzFeed and CNN of fake news, and like it's so kind of interesting.
It's a shit show.
Yeah,
it's a shit show. Let's not paint it as anything less than a shit show. That's what it is. This is insane. We have WAPO coming out saying originally, like, all of these alternative media outlets are fake news. Like, and the only reason that WAPO was originally saying that, Washington Post was originally saying that, is because alternative and independent media covered the election fairly. They covered the contents of WikiLeaks leaked documents, not hacked documents, leaked documents. And you have alternative media making a coup, taking over journalism as it was meant to be because they were doing it with integrity, and mainstream media was falling all over itself to point the finger at the people who were responsible for making it look like crap. And now we have this instance of literal fake news where you have a document that has no backing whatsoever, nothing to substantiate it whatsoever, and BuzzFeed runs with it, and all of mainstream media runs with it too. And then they're all pointing fingers at each other for the fact that they all publish the same damn information. I mean, this, if there were a sign of the death of mainstream media, this is it. That's it. When you have the New York Times pointing at CNN saying, hey, you're fake news, and vice versa, that's it. If anybody had any doubt, this should be the final nail in the coffin.
I mean, it is pretty funny to see this kind of civil war playing out now in the media and stuff, and just how ridiculous it's become. Now, keep in mind that the Washington Post recently came out and they were like, okay, well, maybe we made a mistake and we shouldn't have come out with this fake news narrative, because now it's being turned back against us and everyone's accusing us of fake news whenever we post something stupid or something that is unbacked by evidence, or we're just saying stuff that because someone else said stuff. And that's the problem with New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, and the list goes on with all these mainstream media outlets, Fox News and the rest of them, is that they're so used to just being able to say whatever they want, especially like when they're recopying articles from the Associated Press, which is what most of these people do, is they're able to just say, oh, well, our sources tell us that, so-and-so happened and so-and-so said and this, that, and the other. While on the other hand, people like us at the anti-media, independent media outlets, it's like we're expected to provide proof and sources for our information, our articles. And so there's a point where the mainstream media is held to a lower standard than the independent media, while at the same exact time coming out and saying, well, the independent media are peddling fake news and they're doing this and they're doing that. And all we're seeing right now today, January 11th, 2017, the mainstream media is like imploding and it's in like a civil war against itself. And nobody knows up from down and the left from right, and nobody knows what's real, what's fake. Like they've sabotaged themselves. I mean, I can't help but notice the similarities between what's going on right now in the mainstream media and what's happened with the Democratic Party. I mean, they've beat themselves. They've beaten themselves up, and they thought they were going to outsmart everybody with this little strategy of fake news and getting Facebook to censor everybody but them. But I don't know, dude, it just backfired, and it backfired miserably against them. And I'm just sitting here and I'm just amazed at seeing it unfold and seeing it happen. It's just ridiculous. But overall, the other issue here is that all this propaganda and all this confusion and is it real? Is it fake? Is it substantiated? Is it unsubstantiated? Is there people, is this just some dude that typed it up on a Word document? Is it 4chan that trolled the CIA? What is it? Like, nobody knows, right? The overarching issue, though, is that all of it, no matter whether it's true or not true, it's against Russia. And so all of the talk and all of the confusion and everything, no matter what, the narrative is still moving in the direction of Russia is the boogeyman and Russia is this huge threat. And there's been this concerted effort in the media to paint Russia as this kind of like entity that is coming for it's like an animal that's on the loose, and it's it's on the verge of undermining the entire American way and shit. But the reality of the situation is that Russia is not a threat to the United States. It's a very small economy. It's a very small military compared to the United States. They have very limited resources compared to us. They have very small economy compared to us. Very much less influence, at least for now. It's growing, but still a lot less than ours. But we're painting Russia as like this apocalyptic threat, which obviously is basically being set up to just more or less justify any military action, military buildup, which is ongoing right now. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the headlines of troops and tanks and artillery getting stationed in Eastern Europe, Lithuania, Poland, all up and down the Russian border. All of this propaganda is made out to justify that kind of stuff. And the fact of the matter is that as the media pushes this anti-Russian narrative, the thing to keep in mind is that it's still our money that is being used to justify the propaganda. So they're telling us that Russia is this huge threat and that we got to build up. We're sending, I forget the exact number, but I think it was like a huge number, like 2,500 or 3,500
4,000
and artillery pieces that we're sending into Eastern Europe right now. That's a lot.
It's over 4,000.
4,000 pieces of machinery, of military machinery, that the U.S. taxpayer is sending into Eastern Europe right now as we speak. And the troops and the guys that we're sending out there, most recently sent some special ops guys to go to Lithuania, American military people. And we sent them to Lithuania, which is up there by the Russian border, and it's kind of over there by Kaliningrad, which is this. It's weird, but you got to look on the map and see it. But it's like a little Russian enclave that's detached from Russia. That's like actually like it's like a little parcel of land in like Northern Europe, basically, that's detached from Russia, but it's still part of Russia. And so the Russians have placed strategic missiles there and stuff like that. And so because of that, the U.S. is using that as a rationalization to build up all around that area militarily. But keep in mind, like, this is on the other side of the world, right? Russia has a smaller economy than England. Okay? Like, in fact, I'm pretty sure Russia's economy is also smaller than Germany's and France's. I'm
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but keep in mind, though, this is the thing that I think people forget about Russia. And this is important, actually, for this specific detail. Russia has essentially a self-sustaining economy. Yes, they are as much invested in oil and gas as the U.S., but Russia has also done, Putin has done some amazing things in terms of denying GMOs in his country. There is this program that Putin has where people are given subsidies to have gardens to grow their own food. There are a number of things that they have done to be self-sufficient. And there's a difference. Like, we tend to, in the U.S., look at the global economy as purely monetary, from a purely currency sort of standard. And that's not a fair assessment. It's also not a fair assessment to look at the Russian military as smaller than the U.S., because the Russian military has advanced exponentially farther than the U.S. They have taken their deficiencies and put money towards that, and they have developed tactical nuclear weapons that are, kind of smaller nukes that are more targetable for whatever. I don't know. It's just, we tend to, in the US, underestimate Russia. And I think that a lot of that it has to do with propaganda against Russia. We're a lot more equally opposed than I think people understand. It's just that in the US, we have this bellicose culture. It's ingrained in this military industrial machine that from birth we're exposed to believe is patriotic, and this is how it is, and this is the American way. That is true everywhere. It's true in Russia too. But to think that Russia is some sort of weaker power, that it's not sustainable on its own, and that its smaller budget for its military and its economy somehow makes it a weaker power is inane. They have everything necessary to ensure that they will be a superpower. If we were to go to war, it would be an equal match. And it's been mischaracterized in the American mainstream because the figures seem off. But if you look at the extenuating circumstances, they're actually very closely matched. And I think that's a very important point to make that people are misunderstanding.
I want to back up that that statement. The parity is it's there and it's misleading because our strengths and weaknesses are far different. We went over last night about how a war is obsolete because we have $45 trillion of natural resources in the U.S. Well, Russia's got 75 trillion. So I know, Nick, you said they don't have resources. They do. It's just it's hard to tap it, but they got it. So it almost makes sense, honestly. If you really want to control the world, why would you not ally with Russia? Secondly, what Claire is saying about them having smaller nukes is somewhat true. They have this massive ICBM called the Satan. It can fly faster than we can shoot it down. There's no way we can do it. And it actually splits into like 16 separate nuclear missiles once it gets within our missile shield. So they're prepared to fight a war of annihilation with us. They have enough bunkers underneath major cities for 100 million people. We have enough for about 15, and that's pretty much going to go to the elite. So we would not do well.
Well, and they have run drills too. Like let's not make this mistake. I will put this out on the table right now because I think that part of the effectiveness of this fake news Russian propagandist sort of narrative that the mainstream and the political establishment is putting forth is that alternative media and independent media has kind of sort of validated Russia somehow. Let's make no mistake. Putin is not a beneficent sort of dictator. I mean, he has really strict policies. There is no freedom of the press there. Freedom of speech is very much in peril. It's not coming out in support of Putin to say that he might have a better geopolitical stance than the U.S. at this point. It's just that if you look at what's actually going on, the U.S. is sort of posturing and kind of puffing its chest in a lot of places where it shouldn't necessarily be. And Russia has so far been very calm in dealing with these accusations and allegations. But the further that the Obama administration kind of pushes this narrative, I mean, we're towing the line.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I think it's kind of a paradox here, where the media and of course people in Congress and people in the government have overblown the threat from Russia as like this aggressive, big, bully that's going around and just doing whatever it wants geopolitically around the world, and that the U.S. has not done enough to confront. And that's kind of the prevailing narrative that we see coming out of the mainstream media. In fact, we published an article on it yesterday about how Obama is kind of, in fact, media outlets are saying Obama has been too hands off when it comes to Syria. and they're saying that Obama hasn't done enough. And as everyone knows, at least the people listening tonight on our show, you probably already know that the Syrian civil war is a proxy war going on in many, many ways between Russia and the United States. But at the same time, the media tells us that Obama has not done enough. Obama has not been hands-on. He's been hands-off of Syria. He hasn't done anything to help the Syrian people. Now, that's probably, the fact that he hasn't done much to help the Syrian people, that's probably true. But that doesn't mean that we haven't poured a bunch of resources into Syria, not per se to help the people, but to fund the opposition in the civil war. That we've done a lot of. The United States sent, $500 billion, and that's one of the numbers that we know, like, for sure. We sent all this money into Syria. Did I say billion? I think it's 500 million that they sent to the rebels to train them and stuff and have them fight against the government, and that's not including all of the weaponry and the military aid and all of the intelligence that we've sent over there to fight this kind of proxy war. And it's been a lot of resources that we've put into this. And the other thing is that we dropped 11,000 bombs in Syria in 2016 alone. So these media outlets are coming out and saying Obama's been too hands off of Syria. He only dropped 11,000 bombs in Syria. It could have been 30. Is that what they're saying? Like, 11,000 bombs is a lot of bombs that we dropped in Syria, and it's like Obama's been hands off. And the speech that Obama gave last night, his goodbye, his farewell, came off so slick and so optimistic. And I watched it and I was like, man, Obama's such a good speaker. And as much as we sit here on this show and criticize not only Obama, but Democrats, Republicans, Trump, Obama, Clinton, and all these other people, all the people that are trying to tell everyone else how to run their life. We criticize him on a regular basis, but I sat there and I watched that Obama speech, and I was like, man, this guy he put such a good shine on this empire. You know what I mean? Like, it's so cool with Obama in charge of it. It's so cool with Obama in charge. And now Trump's taking over, and he's just, he's going off on Twitter against Meryl Streep. He's going off on calling CNN fake news. I mean, in the press conference today, he was like openly angry. I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but this thing with BuzzFeed and CNN and this report that many, many people say is completely probably fake. And I tend to fall on the side of the opinion that says this report is not legit. It got under Trump's skin, and he was like angry as hell today. And it was just interesting to see how this contrast between Obama, the cool, shiny emperor that has pulled off this doubling the amount of countries that George Bush was bombing, and everybody is pretending like he's weak on foreign policy. Like, how does this happen? Like, how is Obama bombing like 8 countries right now, and the media and his critics are saying he hasn't done enough. He's not been hawkish enough. He's only bombed 8 countries. That's not nearly enough. Like, how do you pull that off? Like, that to me is the biggest mindfuck going on right now, is how everybody is looking at Obama as like, man, he was so cool and he did so many good things and he did this, that. It's like, wait, no. Obama just made the empire cool.
You can't. That's the thing. That actually is really pissing me off, frankly. I realize that at the end of a presidency, I mean, I'm over 40 years old. At the end of a presidency, there is a tendency to kind of glorify or lionize whomever was in office. I understand that. It makes sense. Like you look for the good and you say, wow, that was wonderful. And the person who's coming in is, holy shit, that's terrifying. I understand that. But for anybody who is trying to say that Obama has a good legacy, let's look, I mean, seriously, let's examine his legacy. We have indefinite detention. We have Gitmo not being closed as promised. We have, an expanded surveillance state. We have an expanded police state. We have, I could go on for hours about what we have now that we did not have before he came in office. This is a man who is a very adept orator who fooled the masses because he is so pleasing when he speaks. And he did fool people. And people were very upset about what he had done versus what he had promised. And that's fine, except for at the end of his office, they turn around and don't bother to criticize what it is that he has done. They take what it is that he has done and say, well, that's okay because it's not Trump. That's not acceptable. We're talking about a president who has, expanded these powers of the state to such degrees that people are baffled. I mean, human rights advocacy organizations are baffled. It's just, how can you possibly say, well, he's not that bad of a guy, and yet he can kill some American 16-year-old citizen with a drone in a foreign country with impunity, and he can say that all the rest of us can be detained with impunity in a black site, or that, the surveillance state is okay, or the police state is okay. I mean, this burns me up to the core that people really think that he's okay.
Here's what it is. It goes back to the selective coverage of the mainstream media, right? And so where they can say, okay, like if you're paying close attention during the presidential primaries, the 2016 primaries, you would have noticed that there was several articles from like watchdog websites, like for instance, The Intercept, and maybe several more of these type of like left-wing grassroots websites that were coming out and criticizing the amount of foreign money that was being involved in the elections. In particular, people were upset about the amount of Saudi Arabian money that was influencing the Hillary Clinton campaign. So the question is why is it a story now when we find out that Russia was using its media operation to help elect Donald Trump? Why is it such a big deal now, and why wasn't it a big deal when Saudi Arabia was outed as being partially the financial backers of Hillary Clinton? Well, it goes back to the idea of selective coverage, and that's what Obama has benefited from the most. Now, everything Obama does, of course, Fox News is going to be against Obama superficially on everything. So it's like Fox News is kind of in an echo chamber where they don't have any influence outside of their own little echo chamber of Fox News watchers, which, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that watch Fox News, but they're isolated into that little echo chamber. Outside of the Fox News bubble, all the other news outlets gave Obama a pass on pretty much everything wrong that he did, which would be, for the most part, in my opinion, the war on terror. Which eroded, because of different reasons of the war on terror, they use that as excuses to erode civil liberties, but in the most part expand our foreign policy to be bombing 8 different countries rather than under Bush, where it was only like, 4 or 3 or 2. So, Obama has benefited from the fact that he gets selective coverage and that they only cover it when he does good things, and when he does bad stuff, it's not only is it not like criticized, it's just literally not talked about. So like, I don't know how many people you could ask right now on the street and say, hey, what do you think about the Obama administration's role in the overthrow of the Libyan government in 2011. If you asked 100 people on the street, I think only like maybe 10 or 20 at the most would actually even know what you're talking about, let alone like know the facts about what actually happened. And maybe it probably wasn't a great idea to overthrow Gaddafi because now Libya's in a much worse scenario. Like people just don't even know because of the amount of selective coverage. And it's not the bigger problem that we're facing isn't fake news. And even when the mainstream media is perpetrating it, like fake news is fake news. Like the people bullshit in the media all the time. Fine. But the bigger problem is just huge, enormous stories that are literally just not talked about. And I mean, you can point back to the Democratic primaries where Bernie Sanders was marginalized by the media. Sure. You can point to several different factors. I mean, the third parties just not being talked about at all by the media. That's one of those things where by them not covering it all, it's not the fake news that's a problem. It's the lack of coverage for certain issues. For instance, the fact that we dropped 26,000 bombs last year? Why wasn't that in the news every single day? Like every day it should be like, hey guys, you guys just paid for dropping how many bombs today? You know, hopefully you enjoy that bill that we're going to send you next year on your taxes. Why isn't that news every day? You know, and that's the problem is that we're not.
That's not even officially happening.
Yeah,
Nick.
that's.
Claire, go ahead. What were you going to say?
It's not even. You can't even take that figure and make it make sense to people. They don't understand it. There is a deference for people to understand like tragedy and such, and people have a blindness to what is going on in the world, and that's a given. Like we understand that, but when you have a government that has all of this going on, drone bombing, you know, civilians and citizens, and even a citizen of the United States, when you have this government bombing hospitals and schools, and I mean, countless, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes what has been affected by this administration. That's one thing. You can't bring attention to it effectively while the administration is in office in a way, because the propaganda is so strong. Because we are now, if you consider, we're now debating fake news. We're now debating this literally non-existent Russian threat, this non-existent Russian hacking claim. I mean, you can look at U.S. intelligence officials. I've written about it. U.S. intelligence officials have said there is no way this has anything to do with a hack. It wasn't. It was a leak. They have deflected blame for what has gone on successfully because that was the intent from the first place. And the problem is that it was Obama's administration who expanded war even further, who expanded conflict even further, and who made death even more a facile possibility by drone, who expanded, you know, indefinite detention. This administration, there are people now who say, well, he's been the best president since Carter, or he's been the best president in modern times. If you want to actually examine Obama's administration and his tenure in office, I would urge everybody to go and examine the NDAA, indefinite detention, the drone program, and everything else that has come out, because this is not something to be celebrated. This is an administration that should be like relegated to the bowels of history. And it's absurd
point, because you know the precedent that Obama has set. Now, many of the things that he's allowed to come into law, stuff that he could have vetoed, but stuff that he chose not to and actually signed in, a lot of that stuff was never used, right? And I don't know of a situation where the NDAA, indefinite detention provision, has been used yet. I know it's been used by...
Yeah, you don't know. That's the key, though. That's the point, because what we're talking about with indefinite detention is that these people will be held without attorney, without communication to the outside world, and without means of actually helping themselves in their situation. And that is what is so fucking dangerous about this, pardon my French.
Yeah, and the thing is that now a guy like Trump is taking over at the presidency, and Obama just spent 8 years securing Donald Trump a bunch of extremely dangerous powers. And everybody's sitting there and everybody's like, oh man, Trump is like borderline fascist and, Hitler 2.0. And I mean, how many different names are there for a Trump? We covered that Facebook page, the God Facebook page. They got banned for criticizing the military spending, and they called him the Orange Hitler. How many people have compared Trump already to fascist and authoritarian regimes?
Which is totally disingenuous too. I mean, it's an insult truly to compare him to Hitler, but he'll be a little mini Mussolini possibly. I mean, fascism comes in many flavors. We were talking about it last night. This time it's going to be national fascism. It's going to be corporate. It's going to be big business, and you're going to like it.
But that's the thing, is that because of how cool Obama was and how popular and how good of a speaker he was. I mean, let's face it. If you guys watched that speech he gave last night, it was good.
I don't know, man. It's good if you have no information. But
yeah.
I mean, otherwise it's just a lie and another lie.
Most people don't.
Lie.
Most people don't have the information. So most people watch that thing and they're crying along with Obama and wiping his tears away. Meanwhile,
all you have to do is look at the factual record. All you have to do to dispel any... we're talking about a president who cries tears for, and I'm not saying it's unjustified. He's tearing up over kids killed in the mass shooting in the U.S., but he's bombing the hell out of kids in the Middle East. You cannot say that this man has a good legacy. This is I'm old enough. I'm 42 years old, and I have lived through the administration of George W. Bush. And I will tell you that every second of that administration was just, it was physically painful to watch what was going on. What was worse, though, is Obama with his slick kind of propagandic speeches and the way that he kind of downplays every single thing that he has done that is absolutely unjust in this world. And if you look at his record, if you look at who he has bombed and the legislation that he has passed, the people that are justifying and saying that he has this brilliant legacy, all they have done is bought into the government's propaganda. I would dare say that there is not a single person in this country who supports this administration who has not been overtaken by the propaganda. There is no way anybody can possibly justify what he has done with a Nobel Peace Prize.
Nobel Peace Prize winner bombs another Nobel Peace Prize winner. That's almost a first. That's almost a first, because there's another Nobel Peace Prize winner by the name of Henry Kissinger, who also bombed, I think it was the Red Cross, Cambodia or somewhere around there. Obama, as bad as it sounds, Obama is not the first person to win a Nobel Peace Prize that bombed another country or another group that had a Nobel Peace Prize. So, he can't claim that mantle by himself. But here's the thing that to me is a little bit optimistic, and we've got an opinion piece on the Anti-Media earlier today by Darius. He's going to be on our show sometime really soon. I don't want to slaughter his last name here. Shatamasibi, Darius. Uh, Great opinion piece titled. Hold on, sorry, I had the wrong one up. The title of the article is. God, where is it? Oh, here we go. Why I'm glad Trump will be the next president, and he makes a bunch of great points here. Is just like we were talking with Obama, where he's just like this such a likable, slick guy that gets a pass from the media for pretty much all the bad things he does, and he gets credit for only the good things for the most part. That doesn't seem to be the case with Trump. So just pretty similar to what was going on with like Bush in the second half of his second term. You know, we're talking about like 2006 through 2008. Bush came under a lot of pressure, a lot of heat, not only by the media, by Hollywood, by basically everybody, activists. There was an anti-war movement back then, like, you know, something that we really need like right now that doesn't exist. That was holding Bush somewhat accountable because they weren't letting him get away with a bunch of shit. Now, unlike Bush, Obama has, as we've been talking about throughout the show, Obama's been getting away with a bunch of shit. Like, he gets away with everything. Everything. Indefinite detention, killing U.S. citizens, cracking down on journalism, imprisoning journalists in Yemen, selling billions of dollars in arms to Saudi Arabia. I mean, come on, Saudi Arabia? That's horrible. Israel, his track record with Israel, you know, just bad on human rights. But as
Don't
Trump
forget the prison population exploding among the most diehard of his supporters. He's putting people away for nothing for profit.
Yeah, dude. And so, but here's the thing with Trump is not going to get a pass on all this stuff because he's not slick and he's not likable and he's not like a guy like Obama that can sell you all this stuff. Trump is an asshole that nobody really likes. I mean, he's got a solid base of support. That's a given.
Yeah, I was going to say, now, come on, because that's not fair. It's like, I don't even think that his supporters necessarily, for the most part, like him. But we're talking about somebody who garnered, like, the vast majority of the vote. Whatever. I mean, I'm not going to debate details there.
Well,
People looked at Trump because he was not Hillary Clinton, in essence. I'm not saying he's better because this guy is going to be a freaking fascist, as far as I can tell. But at the same time, like, let's not diminish the fact that the establishment was so sour to people that they found it necessary to vote for this guy.
Exactly. And so, you know, here's the thing is I'm trying to piece together, like, why is it that there's like all of this pressure going against Trump coming from like the CIA and
anti-globalist,
the media establishment, and all of these factors that are working against Trump, like with all these accusations, and of course that thing that came out last night and today with the, you know, Trump pays for prostitutes to piss on each other on beds that Obama.
That's bullshit.
Like, you know, why is all this stuff coming out? Well, I'll tell you why. Because they had such a great salesman in Obama that, like, Obama was able to centralize power into the executive branch of the United States more so, I think, than basically any president has been able to do since, I don't know, Lincoln maybe. And all of that power was not supposed to go to some doofus asshole that people don't like, that is going to be unpopular in the press and in popular culture and, you know, generally speaking. You know, like, it was supposed to go to someone that was going to come off as a benevolent person, like, you know, kind of like Hillary Clinton, but not quite, because people just don't like Hillary Clinton for several reasons. But I think the reason why there's been so much pressure going against Trump is not because he's some type of outsider or some type of anti-establishment figure. It's because he's not going to make a good salesman for the empire. He's going to be a guy that's going to be criticized left and right and at every step of the way. And all of this criticism is going to be an impediment to the U.S. empire. Whereas Obama was like the perfect guy. He was likable. He was funny. He was slick. He was great at giving speeches. Everybody, I watched the speech last night, and like you said, Claire, like forgetting the stuff I know about what Obama has done, putting that stuff aside, watching that speech, it was inspirational. It was like, man, this guy is like really great. He's a really emotional speaker and stuff. But Trump is not. I mean, Trump is not a polished, figurehead that is going to be a great salesman of the empire. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Trump is probably going to attempt to carry on a similar agenda to what Obama has done in many aspects. I'm sure there's going to be some changes to it, but Trump is not going to be. I mean, what I'm expecting out of a Trump presidency, from what I've seen so far, is 4 years of Bush's final couple of years, like where he's just so unpopular and so like challenged at every single step of the way that it's going to be a impediment to the empire, and that's not very popular with the people that are in charge of things right now.
Right, but Nick, you have to understand though. I mean, actually, Trump has some brilliant ideas. In terms of looking at the empire, like not from my standpoint or yours or anybody else's, but he is looking at what the empire is doing, and he has seen that there is an impediment in the pathway towards kind of like affecting this nationalist, healthcare thing and everything else. I mean, we're talking about somebody who he sees the bigger picture, arguably in a very frightening way, and he looks at every policy in the U.S. as a business policy and something to be thwarted. So for the people who have interest in advocacy, it's the individual businesses, it's the individual domains, it's the individual ways that we like thwart this that are necessary right now. And I don't think it's the end of the world with Trump, as people have made it out to be. I see where the difference lies. I see where there is a very perilous consequence where, people were, he is looking awfully fascist, but at the same time, this could be beneficial.
Yeah, I don't know. It's we're yet to see. The guy hasn't even been put in power yet, so we don't know what he's going to do, right? But judging by his past actions and stuff, it's clear that he's being opposed by many players that are kind of in charge of things right now. But he's kind of put Goldman Sachs in charge of his economic policies, and he's putting ExxonMobil in charge of, our foreign policy and stuff. And so, I don't expect much on the way of help for the average working class person. But again, there's so much flack being caught. Think about this. Recently, Eric Holder left the Attorney General post, and he went and he started a job working for Wall Street, and while he was working for the Obama administration, it was part of his job to supposedly hold Wall Street accountable and prosecute people that were caught doing bad things and, white collar crimes and that kind of stuff. And then he left office and he went into Wall Street. Now, there wasn't very much news about that. There really wasn't very much. And recently, California hired Eric Holder to represent us as Trump comes to office. And so I guess I'm still going to be paying Eric Holder's salary out of my paycheck. But the thing is that, you know, these guys are like getting away with being, you know, involved in special interests on the Obama administration, but in the Trump administration, it's a little different. It's like, oh, well, this guy is like ExxonMobil, and these guys are Goldman Sachs. Like, people are actually caring again, and that's a good thing. Like, it's as horrible as Trump is, and as fascistic leaning, and as brash, and as many racist comments and stupid policies that he's put forward, like putting up this giant wall, which is going to be just several miles from where I'm standing right now, and making me pay for it and all that. As stupid as that stuff is, the good thing is that people are actually going to be paying attention again, and it's going to make being anti-war great again. And for the first time since the Obama election, we can actually have an anti-war movement again. And maybe this time around, we need to invest more resources in getting people to understand that it's not only Republicans that can be assholes. It's not just Republicans that are starting wars, and it's not only Republicans that are bailing out Wall Street. Like, people need to know, as we start building a new movement that is going to try to oppose Trump's the bad policies of Trump, we have to build a movement from here on out that is nonpartisan, that is not saying, oh, well, we oppose Trump because he's a Republican. No, we oppose Trump because we don't support fascism. That's why we need to start organizing, not because it's that party, or we don't oppose Obama because we think he's a leftist, or whatever reason people give to validate their organization. We need to start organizing based on principles rather than party, and start saying, you know what, we oppose war, and we oppose bombing people that we're not at war with. Whether you're a Republican, whether you're Obama, or whether you're Trump, we oppose it. And that goes for the following administration and the one after that too, because we need to start saying, you know what, enough is enough with this partisan bullshit. The parties have failed everybody. I mean, Trump won the election, quote unquote, won the election without really much help from the Republican Party. And Hillary Clinton, despite all of the help of the Democratic Party and all of the help of their machinery that supports it, still lost. So, like, these two parties are pretty much going the way of the dodo, like, pretty soon here. So there's no longer a point of organizing around these parties. It's organizing to hold them, you know, organizing against the parties, really, and saying, you know, we're going to organize based on principle rather than party, and saying there's certain things that we're just not going to put up with, and there's certain things that we're going to stand up against. And these are the movements of the future, because even with like the Bernie Sanders movement, and it was so heartbreaking for me to see it happen, because I'd been through the same exact thing myself back in 2012 when I was a former Ron Paul supporter and stuff. I had been through the whole thing. I knew what was going to happen, and it was just sad to kind of see it play out all again, and a bunch of people that, you know, personal people that I know, you know, get sucked in and get, you know, fall for the Bernie Sanders phenomenon, and then only to see his movement get assimilated by the Democratic Party and stuff. That's the thing, is like Bernie Sanders had a great movement going, and there's still remnants of it going out there doing good things. Believe me, they're still making headlines today in California. But the Bernie Sanders movement, the mistake was organizing it around the Democratic Party, because, you know, the Democratic Party is just a big giant waste of energy. And the people need to start organizing outside of the two-party system, if we're actually going to try to hold this two-party system accountable, because we have to run against it, compete against it. Anyway, thank you guys all for tuning in. Anti-Media Radio, Wednesday night. We're going to be back on Monday, but, you know, check out the other shows Monday.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.